What comes to mind when you think of Switzerland? Banks, money, precision watches, chocolates, cheese, or the stunning Alps? Yes, all of these are iconic symbols of Switzerland, but there's one more defining trait: neutrality. For over 200 years, Switzerland has remained famously neutral, avoiding alliances, wars, and conflicts. It's been a cornerstone of its identity and culture. But today, that neutrality is facing unprecedented challenges. For the first time in over 2 centuries, Switzerland may no longer be able to sit on the sidelines. What's pushing Switzerland to reconsider its neutrality? And what does this mean for the country and the world? To understand why Switzerland has been neutral for so long, we have to take a trip back to the early 16th century, a time when Europe was constantly at war and the Swiss were known for more swinging swords than yodeling in the Alps. One pivotal moment was the Battle of Marignano, fought near the town of Marignano, about 16 kilometers, 10 miles, southeast of Milan in northern Italy. The battle took place on September 13th and 14th, 1515, and was a decisive clash between the French forces under King Francis I and Swiss mercenaries allied with the Duchy of Milan. Let's just say it didn't end well for the Swiss. Losing 10,000 soldiers tends to make you rethink your life choices. After this devastating loss, the old Swiss Confederacy collectively decided, you know what, fighting isn't really our thing anymore, and thus the seeds of neutrality were planted. Fast forward a few hundred years, and Switzerland's commitment to staying out of trouble was solidified through a series of treaties and agreements. The Congress of Vienna in 1815 officially recognized Switzerland's neutrality. Picture a bunch of European powers shaking hands and saying, let's keep this little mountainous buffer zone out of our drama. It was like making Switzerland the designated driver of Europe. This neutrality was reinforced in 1907 at the Hague Convention, which laid out rules for neutral countries during war. Think of it as Switzerland's official "we're not getting involved" card, and when World War I and World War II came knocking, the Swiss politely answered with "no thank you" and promptly closed the door. But neutrality hasn't always been squeaky clean. During World War II, Switzerland maintained its policy of neutrality, which often meant trading with both sides. Yes, they were selling chocolate to the Allies and maybe a little anti-aircraft ammunition to the Axis. Oh, and let's not forget the Swiss banks, famous for their discretion, offered a convenient hiding spot for Nazi gold and looted art. So, for over 2 centuries, Switzerland's neutrality not only kept it out of wars, but also allowed it to become a hub for diplomacy and humanitarian efforts. Geneva became home to the Red Cross and other international organizations, and the Swiss people took pride in their role as Europe's peacekeepers. But here's the kicker: staying neutral in a world that's anything but peaceful is easier said than done. And today, in the 21st century, the very foundation of Swiss neutrality is being tested like never before. So, what's changed? Why is Swiss neutrality, once seen as untouchable, now facing its biggest threat? Let's start with the obvious: the Russia-Ukraine conflict. This isn't just another regional war, it's a seismic shift in global politics. When Russia invaded Ukraine, the world responded with unprecedented unity, imposing sanctions and sending aid to Ukraine. Switzerland, too, felt the pressure. For a nation built on neutrality, the question was no longer just, should we stay out, but also, what does staying out really mean in a world like this? For the first time in decades, Switzerland chose to act. It adopted EU sanctions against Russia, freezing assets, banning airspace access, and even targeting Russian oligarchs. This marked a significant departure from its traditional stance. Russia's reaction was swift and blunt. Switzerland is no longer neutral, they declared. But this isn't just about sanctions. Switzerland is also rethinking its defensive policies. A recent report from the Federal Department of Defense recommended some groundbreaking changes. These include increasing the defense budget from 0.7% to 1% of GDP, revising weapons export rules to allow re-exports to partner countries, and, perhaps most surprising, explore closer cooperation with NATO. Yes, NATO, the very alliance Switzerland has long avoided joining. But the shifts didn't stop there. In October 2024, Switzerland signed the European Sky Shield Initiative, a collaborative defensive effort among European nations to bolster air defense capabilities. Recently, the Swiss government rejected a neutrality initiative proposed by right-wing supporters. This initiative aimed to enshrine perpetual armed neutrality in the Swiss constitution, effectively locking the country out of any foreign conflicts or sanctions. But the Swiss government politely declined, recognizing that modern neutrality needs flexibility, not fossilization. Even the Swiss seem to realize that standing still in a moving world is a risky strategy. All of this is happening while the Swiss people remain fiercely loyal to neutrality. The Security 2024 study asked how they feel about the world and their place in it. The results? 91% of citizens still support staying neutral. Yep, it seems that when it comes to Switzerland's role in the world, people want to stay neutral, but not too neutral. A whopping 76% support increased conflict mediation efforts. And when it comes to big global players like the UN, Swiss citizens are on board. Over 60% of support active participation in the UN, and 59% even approve of peacekeeping missions. Apparently, neutrality doesn't mean staying home. It means helping fix the mess without picking sides. And then there's defense. While only 17% of Swiss citizens favor joining the EU and 30% are open to NATO membership, a surprising 62% support Switzerland's participation in the European Sky Shield Initiative. It's as if the Swiss are saying, well, defend the skies, but don't expect us to hang NATO posters in our bunkers. Switzerland's approach to neutrality stands out because of its unique commitment to armed neutrality. Unlike Costa Rica, which abolished its military entirely, or Liechtenstein, which hasn't had a standing army since 1868, Switzerland maintains a robust military presence. The idea isn't just to avoid war, it's to make invading so costly that no one dares try. This armed neutrality contrasts with other forms of neutrality worldwide. Japan, for example, takes a very different approach. Its post-World War II constitution forbids participation in war, focusing entirely on self-defense. Meanwhile, Ireland has found a sweet spot between staying neutral and pitching in by participating in UN peacekeeping missions. And then there's Austria, which enshrined its neutrality in 1955 but still cozies up to the EU for economic and political cooperation. But Switzerland isn't the only country grappling with neutrality in a rapidly changing world. Look at Finland and Sweden. These were once paragons of neutrality, but escalating tensions with Russia led both to join NATO, a seismic shift in Europe's security landscape. Switzerland now finds itself at a crossroads. The world has changed, and neutrality no longer guarantees security or influence. Will it follow Finland and Sweden's example and step away from neutrality altogether? Or will it stick to its tried and tested approach, armed neutrality with a modern twist of selective cooperation? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification. We've got plenty more fascinating stories like this coming your way. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.